Hey people, Alex here. Anyway, today I'm going to be talking about the subject very dear to me, where most of my experience is, which is APIs. We're going to be going through things that make your API suck, and how to avoid them, and what you can do to improve your API that you have already. This is not going to be very technical in the sense that you need to be a developer in order to follow it. We're not going to go into code, we're not going to go into any of that, but it's going to be a useful overview for anyone producing or consuming APIs to understand some things about how to treat their APIs better and make a better ecosystem for everyone involved. So we're going to be starting by going through some of the common pitfalls and why there's such a major issue with your API. And then as we move along, we're just going to see some of the things you can do to actually address those issues and improve them, and then create a better API. And one of the things that you need to understand is once you release an API, it's going to be public, people are going to be using it, they're going to be integrating with it. And once it's out there, it's very difficult to change it. And once you have an API out there and people are using it, it's going to be very difficult to change. A lot of people trust the APIs to be stable and ready once they're released. And if you go and change anything, you have to inform them how to decommission or move to a new version, which is not always going to be a possibility, and you might be introducing disruptions on whoever is actually consuming the API. One of the things that can really damage your API's reputation and usability is the documentation. It sounds very obvious, but what people perceive as documentation and what's good documentation are two completely different things. A lot of the time, product developers, and I mean everyone from the dev team to the managers to the board, might just think that having a reference of your API, that's adequate information and you can publish it out there, people can use it, it's up to the developers who use it to understand it. That's incorrect, because unless you make sure to test your documentation, it's up to date, it's factual, it actually reflects a good amount of your application, and all your major use cases are covered by your documentation, along with an introduction, a getting starting guide, even some how-tos on how to complete some tasks. People are going to be frustrated. And when you have frustrated customers, they're not going to perceive your product as worthwhile. And especially if you have hidden features that they're not well documented, or hidden traps and pitfalls, those are things that you need to actually address in your documentation, so that you give them a really good idea and they actually understand what they're working with. For an API product, your documentation, it's not just a reference guide for people to understand how to use it. It's also your marketing. It's also your first impression you leave on a developer or a customer or someone who wants to buy your product. It's very important and you need to spend more thought on this. I'm going to do separate videos on this specific subject, so we're going to go through more about what a good documentation is and so on. So for now I'm going to leave it here and move to another point. While this is a separate point, it's related to the first one about documentation. Both your API and your documentation need to be versioned. This not only allows you to actually fix things or update things or release new product versions, but it also allows your documentation being versioned to actually follow along in the same scheme, and it also gives you the opportunity to review your documentation and improve it every time you have to release a new version. So keep it in mind. Another thing that can really kill your product is having no support for it. And by support, I don't mean just an email address or a phone number that people can call and they get an answer 1 to 3 days. But I mean actually your application supporting its users. And that can manifest in many ways, like you don't have good enough error messages, that your responses are nonsensical, things happen and you have no feedback to the users, your documentation again is not actually covering a lot of use cases that people might want to do. So that can create a really hostile environment, and you just feel as a customer that you paid or chose a solution and you get nothing out of it. As you can see, a lot of these points are very interconnected with each other. So the next one is that if your API doesn't have a consistent response structure, that can really ruin it. And by consistent response structure, I mean, what if you had, let's say, a blog post? We're going to keep it simple. We have a WordPress site that has blog posts. What if you requested the blog post in one API, and then it returned in a very specific format, and from another API, it gets returned in a completely different one? And not just the big object, but let's say the tags in it. What if you request a tag and in a blog post and a tag in a post? It has a completely different structure. People trying to parse it are going to be surprised that their integration is going to be breaking. They have to create special transformers and consumers for its different version of the object you have. This is insane. This is not something a developer wants to do. I just want to use your product, make my job easier. I don't want to have to deal with the junk in your system. I have junk in my system. Our junk should not clash. We just need to live in harmony with junk as far apart from each other as we can. And that's not just for the actual customer, but also other developers from different product teams. Because often we have massive organizations. Do you really want to start fighting with Liam from the Iris office? No, fuck Liam. We don't actually want to speak to him. Just for the record, I don't know any Liams. I mean, I know Liams, but not anyone I would say fuck Liam, so hi. And similar to the responses, hi Liam again. Imagine having consistent design in your APIs, and that plays again into the responses. Imagine if your routes operated differently. So you wanted to create a post, and when you create a post, you make a post request with all your information, blah, blah, blah. But what if you want to create a different post type, let's say news, and then the whole process works that you actually need to do a post request, to actually generate an ID, and then you need to get that ID and create a patch request to update all the, it can just be a very confusing process. So if you're designing things that are similar enough, make sure that they follow the same design principles, the same structure, and you might have better success. And that's going to help both your different teams trying to develop new APIs for the product, but also for the consumer to feel like they're using a unified product and not a bunch of microservices different teams have built. For the last few points, I'm going to summarize it and just say that if your API has low reliability, low consistency, and low availability, it's not going to be a good experience for anyone. So just make sure that whatever you release as an API can actually operate on its own, and it's quite robust. It has some fail-safes, or at least if it doesn't work, make sure there's really good documentation about it or communication about it, because you need those signals to show that you're a professional and it's not just some afterthought of the product that you just have there. Alright, so I'm done with negativity now. It's a beautiful day. We're just going to look at how we can create a more premium experience for our API product. Starting off, I'm sure this doesn't come as a surprise, but you need an API style guide. Similar to how designers or marketers or branding agencies might create a style guide about how your applications should feel, how the color needs to be placed on different backgrounds, fonts, that boring shit. You need to also create a style guide about how you design your APIs, how they should look, what's the documentation standard, what are the challenges you have faced in the past and how to overcome them, because that often leads into a more productive discussion when you have to add new features or someone needs to change something. And I'm going to, again, make a different video on specific API style guides, but you can find in the comments or the description a style guide that I have created, and it's completely white label. So feel free to check it out on my GitHub, use it. If you want to just say hi, hey, I used it, or you said stupid crap in there, feel free to do so. But just focus a lot on defining your objects, defining your types, make sure it's all consistent, make sure it's logical. And a lot of the time, this is documentation that's going to lead you down a path of iterations and improvements. So it's good to be there, and it's good to be consistent and updated. And especially if you're an organization that scales up and you get more products joining in or more developers joining in, it's really useful to know that this is how we build APIs here. This is our beliefs, this is our system. Again, you don't have to go full API first development, because that's a completely different way of working. But the moment you use APIs, and I'm sure 99% of the companies have at least their own internal APIs, they need to be consistent and following a style guide. Another big thing, and this might come naturally to people who are product managers and product owners, but not necessarily to developers or architects, just because of the nature of the roles, is that you need to get familiar with your audience, and APIs are your product. They're not just an afterthought, so you need to understand who uses them, how, what are they trying to achieve with it. So you really need to understand what you're building, for who you're building, and what are the likely scenarios it's going to be used in. For example, are they using it in a build pipeline? What languages are they using? how would they integrate with their systems. It's good information to know because that can really shape your decisions for the future. And on top of that, you need to introduce good analytics and make sure that what you're capturing is meaningful. And for that, what I mean, one of the best metrics that I really enjoyed having is the success rate of first calls to the API. What I mean by that, when someone generates an API key and we track them throughout their whole first request until they complete it, and one of the metrics we get there is how many failures they had before they had a successful request. And it's up to you to define what a successful request is, but we need to capture how fast they authenticated, how fast they got to grips with the whole system until they got, let's say, the blog post. There's also other key metrics that are really good to have. For example, failure rate, error rate, success rate, usage for key parts of the systems. You don't have to introduce it everywhere. If you have an export API route that runs once a month, who cares really? But if it's the core of your business, then you need to track it and make sure that you understand what's happening. And this will tell you not only about your audience, their technologies, and how they integrate it, which is part of knowing your customers, but it's also going to tell you the skill level. Some of your routes might be too difficult for a citizen developer to use. It might be how they try to fit it together or how easy it is to understand. So when you go and release a new route, or you're reviewing your style guide, or you have to release a new version of the API, you can see those statistics. And based off of that, you can make informed decisions on how to change it. For example, you might need extra abstraction on something. Maybe it was too many operations and one of them was a headache, but you can create a generic abstract route that can do everything in the background. It's worth understanding what your key business logic is and track the usage and the errors. You should also be collecting feedback, but remember, not all feedback is valuable feedback. Another thing that's very important is to introduce peer reviews between products, especially when you work in a larger organization with multiple product teams deploying APIs. It's very crucial to create a culture where a tech lead or architect, or even like a normal developer in a team, can actually go and review some other person's product. It doesn't have to be every pull request, but maybe before you release a version, they can review it, provide feedback. And that will not only help you to create a more unified approach to the API, but through those discussions, you can actually create things that you need to standardize on. It can go into your style guide, you can think of new ideas, you can improve the API, and you can also make sure that the organization understands how to create a cohesive product experience. And in a similar way, it's very important for product owners from different products speak about the APIs as well and speak about it as part of the product. The last point might sound a bit ridiculous, but it was also very ridiculous to me how well it worked and how not many people did it. Try using your API, but don't use it with one of the developers one Slack message away. Start as if you were a customer or someone trying the API out. Start from a blank page, a Postman collection, whatever resources you have. Test your resources, test your documentation, test your onboarding. Use the API, try to do something with it. Do it when it makes sense. So before you start releasing a new version, before you work on new documentation, before you work on new routes, it's worthwhile to actually check it. And if you're not actively developing on it, create some checkpoints. Are we still accurate with everything? So check your APIs, people. That's pretty much the points for now. I just wanted to give you a quick overview, start the discussion, start the series on how your API doesn't have to suck. You're going to have some materials in the description, and I'm going to be releasing more videos on style guides, documentation, and some pro gamer tips to actually introduce some niceness to it. And maybe as part of it, we're going to be checking out some APIs, doing some reviews. Well, maybe not live on stream, but we'll figure out how it works. So yeah, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Let me know if it helped you. Connect with me. Tell me I'm an idiot. Yeah, and have a great day. Bye.